Hi guys, so as you know, Natasha Denona is a famous makeup artist, entrepreneur, and is an owner of a multi-million-dollar brand, Natasha Denona Makeup. Today's video, I want to rank all the greatest releases that she's come up with. There's quite a few, so if you're new to my channel, make sure that you're subscribed to be entered in giveaways, and let's go ahead and jump right in. So these are all my Natasha Denona purchases. I have all of her eyeshadow, liquid eyeshadows, the ones I've just been recently picking up and I reviewed for you guys in a separate video. Now I know some of you are asking to see more up close swatches of these, and yeah, there's quite a few multi-chrome shades that I love and I recommend to everyone. So in this video, in today's video, I'll let you know if these multi-chromes truly rank above her regular eyeshadow formula. So the first shade I'm swatching for you guys is called INFRA Nude, and it's also in the swatches that I posted on Instagram. It's very pretty, but it's not my favorite. I will show you some more as we go along. So let's get them all out from underneath here. And yeah, we'll be ranking all 5 of these. So let's go ahead and keep swatching. So this is my probably #1 shade. It's called SCARAB. Now I know Mel Thompson also released a palette lately, which I purchased, and she also has a shade called SCARAB in there. This one's definitely more on the green yellow side than the Mel Thompson palette. Then the next shade is INFRA Nude. It's very similar, but not quite, because it's got more of like a pinkish tone to it. And then I'll probably say my third favorite is DOGBANE. It has like a nice reddish tone to it. Those 3 are my top 3. Then I think Ultraviolet for sure. That's the closest to the Pat McGrath's Extraterrestrial. And probably my 4th favorite. And last but not least, it's gotta be Dragonfly. I don't know why, I just wasn't drawn into this shade as pinkish. It's too pinkish for my liking. So the only issue I had with these liquid eyeshadows was sensitivity. A little bit sensitivity after like 8 hours. I feel like my eyes were tearing up, but this is the order I would rank them probably. You can see it's very beautiful. So let's go to rank the big palettes. Now, one of my all-time favorite Natasha Denona palettes has probably got to be the 28 pan green brown one, because it's just so versatile. I know affordability wise they're not the best, but quality wise it's been phenomenal. And I ended up like repurchasing several times, and it was one of my favorites of all time. But before I dive into ranking all these palettes, I have to mention another palette that I really enjoyed that was released this summer, and that was the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. Now at first I thought this is just going to be like any other neutral palette, but once I started using it, I got a lot of looks out of it, and it ended up being very versatile, unlike this one, which is her blue purple palette. I've had this for like many years now, and I've barely reached out for this. Now it does have some duochromes in there, which is like bluish green gray, mostly purple, but over the years I've realized I'm not really a purple eyeshadow kind of person, and for that reason it's not going to be in my top ranking. Another one just like that, which I haven't reached out for, is the Sunrise palette. I got it because of its similarity to the Sunset, but I don't really reach out for it as much, so I'll probably rank these below the favorite palettes that I just talked to you about, and I will give you my ranking, not just based on favorites, but also based on formula. For example, all of her eyeshadow palettes include talc in them, and some people may have some sensitivity to talc, so for that reason I may not be putting the eyeshadow palettes ahead in ranking when it comes to comparison with the liquid eyeshadow, because the liquid eyeshadow doesn't have talc in it. And these Bloom blushes, I found like there's like some traces of like micro glitters in them, so for that I'm going to be probably ranking them at the bottom of the list, even though they're not technically eyeshadows. I mean, some people have been using these as eyeshadows. I just personally don't really get along with this as much as I thought I would. So for that, I'm going to put these at the bottom of the pile, and I probably won't be repurchasing any more of her blushes again. Another new release that I didn't get to talk much on this channel was the Love palette. I actually kind of like this palette, so it's probably not at the bottom of my list, but it'll be somewhere in the middle. So with that being said, let's go ahead and rank them from the least favorite to the most favorite. And at the very last place, we have the Safari palette. I really wanted to like this palette. Unfortunately, with so many negative reviews coming out, it just made me see the worst in it, and so I had to rank it at the bottom. My next least favorite would be the Tropic palette. I didn't get a whole lot of use out of this palette. I didn't hate this palette as much, but it was just one that didn't work a lot for me, and I didn't reach out to as much. Now I have my nude custom palette that I made from her Viva palette and her Star palette that I combined along with some of the minis. So I'll probably rank that next. But overall, the blush palettes are still the worst of the worst for me, just because that cream formula can get contaminated easily, and I'm not a fan of contamination. Another honorable mention in the bottom of the list is definitely the Aries palette. Now, it was so hyped up by so many people online, and I was just so tempted to buy it. But again, it was a purchase that I regretted because the formula back then, I feel like it was so gritty, and I don't really reach out for it, like almost never. So that is going to be at the bottom of the list along with the blushes. Alright, so now let's get on to the mini. So she's released a bunch of mini palettes over the years, like they were like $25, and I would say my least favorite mini palette of hers so far has got to be the Mini Nude. Now, I did buy the Mini Leela and the Mini Star, but I got rid of those, so they're not already in my list. But this one I didn't reach out for as much, and as of all the ones that I kept, it's been the least used, and therefore it's been at the bottom of the list. Now, next up is the Retro palette. This was released in 2020, and it was hard to get at first, but eventually it showed up everywhere. I actually liked it, but it's still not as good as the Gold palette in my opinion, and I'm starting to gravitate towards that one more. So that's probably higher ranked up on my list because you can create a lot more looks with it, and the Retro one is still kind of limited in its use. So these days, now that we're approaching fall, I find that I gravitate more towards the Gold palette than the Retro palette. I feel like the Retro palette was something that I would reach out for more during the spring and summer, and now with fall colors showing up, I think that one is going to be ranked further on top. So this is just a quick recap of the bottom 5 of the list, and now we're getting closer to the top of the list, including the bigger palettes. And I know we already talked about one palette in particular that was not a favorite, and that is the Safari palette because of its blendability and the lack of shimmers. Like we talked before, other YouTubers had this issue with it being patchy and not blendable. So for me personally, it didn't really work out as great. So I probably rank that at the bottom, along with another palette that didn't get a whole lot of use, which was the Tropic palette, for reasons that we already talked about. So those are at the bottom. So moving on, I would say that the next couple of releases are hard to choose, especially if you have to choose between Metropolis and Gold. I still think Metropolis is better than Gold in some ways if you already own the liquid duochrome eyeshadows that she just came out with. A lot of people seem to be loving on this Gold palette, and it's mainly for the 3 top shades that are duochrome. But if you already are getting these with the liquid duochrome, I feel like Gold palette doesn't have as much use compared to, for example, the Sunrise palette, which is more of like an everyday palette. So now the Sunrise palette, I don't think it can compare to the Gold palette. I still think the Gold palette is better than the Sunrise palette. Daily wear colors in it, but not as much as the Bronze palette, not even the Metropolis palette. But the Metropolis palette is probably still better in my opinion than the Gold because of cream to powder formula and because of so many colors that you're getting. Now, a lot of people didn't have luck with it, but you know, it was hit or miss. The next up is the Lila palette. I've modified mine a little bit with the 28 pan, but I tried to make it more purple. These days I'm just not wearing as much purple as I thought I would, so for that it's probably next on my list. I don't know if I should rank it above the Metropolis. Probably below it is probably best because I don't get as much use out of it these days. Next thing that I haven't talked about is one of these 28 pans. Now I've had these for like 4 years, and I would say the blue purple one was definitely my least favorite and least reached out for palette, and I find that it has not as much versatile colors in it, not getting much use out of it these days, but still higher ranked than the Lila, and definitely not worth as much as I paid for it. Now between the $65 pans, I definitely rank the bronze over the Love palette just because the colors are so much more wearable. The Star palette, which I have pieces of it left, is probably somewhere in the middle, and then we have the all-time favorite of mine, which is the green brown palette, and I would probably rank that at the top. I know it's the most expensive one, but between that and the liquid eyeshadows, I think that the liquid eyeshadows, each of them have a certain place between these. Like I said, my favorite is the Scarab one, and I would probably rank that after the bronze. Same with the INFRA Nude, and then probably the DOGBANE color. And so the other two, the Dragonfly and the other one, I probably rank them somewhere below. But yeah, I would say this is the order of my Natasha Denona purchases, and I would probably rank them in this order. So those are my recommendations from left to right, as well as the mini palettes. So as you see, it doesn't depend on the size for me, at least. For me, it's about the quality, and I feel that the old formula quality still holds up. Now I will say my opinion might change from time to time, but for the most part it's been pretty consistent. But yeah, I would say that the minis definitely don't hold up as much quality, and the liquid eyeshadows, while they're great, the new ones, I still feel that the powder formula still has its own uniqueness, and that's why I rank them further high on the list. Now I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments below which ones were your favorites, what did you like, what are your purchase ideas and thoughts, and as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.